Welcome to Chat with Nat, Conversations That Count, the podcast where real conversations meet real life. I'm your host, Natalie Keim, an entrepreneur, financial professional, caregiver, and advocate for living fully. This show dives into the stories and strategies that shape who we are and how we thrive. For this week's episode, I'm going to start off with a trigger warning. So before we begin, this episode contains discussion of suicide, mental health struggles, and recovery. Listener discretion is advised. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. In the United States, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline for free, and confidential support is available 24/7. Now, as we jump into this episode, you guys, sometimes the moments that break us the most become the moments that actually build us back the strongest. What if everything that was supposed to end your story became the beginning of your purpose? Today, we're talking about survival, strength, and the power to turn pain into purpose with someone who's lived it, not just talked about it. And before we jump into the introduction of our guest today, today's money tip, or this week's money tip of the week, is to invest in your mindset before you invest your money. When people think of wealth, they think dollars, but mental wealth, peace, clarity, and purpose is truly where it all begins. You can't build abundance on burnout or brokenness. So before you invest in markets or policies, invest in your mental health. It's the foundation for every other form of success. I am so excited to introduce you guys to today's guest. Her name is Lindsay Stadel, a devoted wife, mother, grandmother, and powerhouse entrepreneur. She runs 4 thriving companies: Stadel Farms, S&S Harvesting, Flint Hills Transport, and TLS Logistics. Yes, that is a lot of businesses and a lot of work. But beyond these business titles and success stories, Lindsay's real mission is about hope, healing, and breaking stigma. Lindsay is deeply committed to mental health advocacy, driven by her personal experience with suicide and overcoming mental health struggles. Her mission is to support others battling mental health issues and suicidal tendencies. As an award-winning author, she uses her voice and writing to address these important topics, and she's now seeking opportunities to speak publicly, share her story, and help fight the stigma surrounding suicide. Lindsay's journey reflects resilience, compassion, and a dedication to making a positive impact on others. So, Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm grateful to have you, and I'm grateful for the fact that you're willing to share your story, because I think that there is so much around mental health, and there are the extremes in every direction around it. And I think there's so many people who maybe haven't experienced this in the way that you have, that lack understanding and honestly empathy in the situation. And I think that sharing stories like yours helps those of us, and I'll refer to myself, who have not faced those kind of things, to better understand and to better step into the gap and support people through the difficulty they might be facing. So again, thank you for being here and being willing to share your story. So I want to start by kind of setting the scene. You've built such a successful life, but before all the titles and companies, there was a lot of pain. Can you take us back and kind of just set the stage a little bit on what life looked like before that breaking point for you?
Oh, absolutely. My mental health struggle started all the way back when I was a teenager in high school, when I got raped, and my family really, they didn't believe me, and they really didn't do anything to help me. And so my first time that I can remember having suicidal ideation was when I was 14.
Mm.
And my entire high school career, I was not a good student. I lying, cheating, stealing, and straight out of high school was arrested, and just really, really struggled my entire teenage life. And then coming into my adult life, I got pregnant when I was 20 and, had a beautiful baby girl. And,
Mm.
that I thought that was going to straighten me out. But the postpartum depression came in and, knocked me down again. And then after that, I really kind of stayed at a very flat line. My relationship with my daughter's father, it fizzled, so we broke up. I started dating this other gentleman who, it was a coworker, and a few years later, we wound up getting married. A couple years after that, we wound up pregnant, and I had my son. And through all of that, I was still struggling mentally, but
Mm.
I never went and talked to anybody about it because I just figured that, well, it's just something that I have to deal with.
Mm.
And in 2014, I lost my father to cancer. And that really shook me because I was very much a daddy's girl. And my husband at the time, just it really broke me because the day of my father's funeral, we got into a crazy fight, and he didn't even show up to the funeral. So that really, really hurt me. Um, can continue on a few years down the road. Gosh, it was August of 2016. My husband then and I got a divorce. I was part of our community's volunteer fire department, and that's where I met my best friend.
Mm.
And my best friend and I, we ended up being partners on the fire department. He was having issues with his marriage. I was having issues with my marriage, and he helped me through my divorce because that's what I needed. I never really had girlfriends. I
Mhm.
was always the person who had guy friends. And so when I joined the fire department, that was great. I was one of three females on it and, got along with everybody. It was wonderful. Um, well, my partner then, he also, like I said, was having issues with his marriage. They wound up getting divorced. And shortly after that, we decided, well, we're best friends, we're partners on the department. Let's see if there's anything romantically.
Yeah.
And, but at the same time, I was also on again, off again dating this other gentleman who ended up being my abuser
Mm.
in every way possible, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially. It was absolutely crazy. I again fell back into my lying, cheating, stealing because I was seeing both guys. I, was not being the mother that I should be for my children. My daughter was taking care of my son
Mm.
more than I was. She was working two jobs, helping pay the bills because the money that I was making at my job was going to this other gentleman and his daughter. And I really fell into a very, very dark place because my best friend and I, of course, like I said, we were dating, trying to date on and off. It really hurt our relationship, our friendship. It hurt our relationship in the department.
Mm.
It hurt the department. Um, there's a lot of things that people think of every day that it did.
Yeah.
My mental health was hurting a lot of people. And in September, actually September 24th of 2017, my best friend and I, we were, driving around. We live out in the country or in a small farming community, driving
Yeah.
around the gravel roads, drinking, listening to music, having a good time talking, which is something that we always do. That's kind of what we did out here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, and this is gonna sound strange, all of a sudden, I just blanked out. I don't remember anything. I remember one thing. After we started talking about the relationship with my abuser, I blacked out. And the next thing I remember is screaming. And then after that, I don't remember anything for about 24 hours. And when I woke up, I was in the hospital. I had gotten to the point that I decided everyone in my life would be better off without me
Mm.
because I was hurting everybody so bad.
Yeah.
I was thinking my kids would be better off just being with their fathers instead of having me in their lives. And I opened the door and I jumped out of his truck while we were driving down the gravel road, 30 mile an hour. Um, my face broke my fall.
Mm.
And I'm going to rephrase that because it wasn't a fall. My face broke my attempt.
Mm.
And when I woke up in the hospital, my mom and one of my older sisters were there. And I remember my older sister, she went, "Oh, we don't even call each other, by our names really. Oh, sister," she said to me. And she says, "They had to shave your head." And of course I was confused. And I said, "What?" And she says, "They had to shave your head so they could fix your face. Because when I landed, my skin tore away from my face and it was just
Mm.
hanging down." And she says, "So you're bald." And I don't remember this, but apparently I said, "Oh, well, that's just great." And my mom, the doctor came and told me that my mom was there, and asked if I wanted to see her. And I said no.
Mm.
And then I said, "Well, wait a minute, which mom?" Because I had my mom and I had my stepmom. And he told me that it was my mom. And so she came back, and her and my sister were just standing there in tears. But I still was confused. I still didn't know what was going on. I remember the first thing that went through my mind when I opened my eyes was, why didn't it work?
Mm.
And then the next thing that went through my mind was my kids, because I didn't leave a suicide note.
Yeah.
It was an all of a sudden decision. I had been hospitalized twice before this for suicidal ideation, but I never actually did what I was talking about doing until that night. And so when I'm sitting in the hospital and my daughter's sitting next to me, she was a senior in high school, and she was sitting next to me and she was in tears because she didn't understand why I did what I did. She knew what was going on, and at the time, I didn't think that she did. I didn't think that she knew all of the lies I had told, the people I was cheating on, the stealing I was doing, but she did. And So that that was hard for me to see her sitting there, knowing that now I have to explain to her and explain to everybody why I did what I did. Because if I'd have been successful, and for just a moment I was, until the doctor brought me back.
Mm.
So in that split second, I did succeed, but I also failed because the doctor brought me back.
Yeah.
And so I remember thinking that my daughter and my son would have had to been living their entire life wondering, why did mom do this? And now I realize that I've got a lot of people that I have to make amends with. I have a lot of answers, a lot of questions that I'm going to have to answer. And so I was on suicide watch at the hospital for a week. And then after I left the hospital, I went to go live with my stepdad, but he wasn't my stepdad because him and my mom weren't married anymore. But he's still my dad.
Yeah.
He had been my dad since I was 2. And then his new wife, so she was my mom. Yes, step parents. Didn't ever call my step parents my step parents. They were my mom and dad,
Yeah.
just like everybody else.
Yeah.
So I went to go live at their house, and I was there for about 2 weeks. And then my family decided to have an intervention because they knew that I needed real intense mental help. So I then committed myself to mental health facility, and I was there for a week. And while I was at the facility, my best friend, the same man whose truck I jumped out of, came to visit me. And when I walked into the visitation room, I could see the pain in his eyes. He didn't
Mm.
know for 2 days if I had lived or survived because nobody would tell him.
Mm.
And so when I saw him and saw the pain, I knew that even though my body was bruised and broken, that he was still there for me, or else he wouldn't have come to visit.
Yeah.
And this other gentleman that was my abuser, he broke up with me by through text while I was in the hospital on suicide watch.
Mm.
But my best friend was there for me, came to visit me, told me that he was going to be there for me when I got out. Because one of the biggest things physically that happened to me was my nerves in my left arm that attach into my spinal column.
Uh-huh.
They were torn out. When I landed, the impact was so severe that they were torn out. And I came to have what's called a brachial plexus injury, and my left arm was just flail. There was nothing. So I was now having to learn how to navigate life one-handed.
Yeah.
I was now having to learn how to accept my broken and bruised body. How am I gonna put my bra on? How am I gonna put my hair up? Simple things in life that, you don't realize it until it happens. I used to love typing on a computer. My daughter would give me her handwritten school projects or reports, and I would type it up for her because I was fast.
Yeah.
Um, and I can't do that now. I have to do that all one-handed. So how am I gonna continue my daily life one-handed? That was just something that I was terrified of.
Yeah.
But he told me that he would help me navigate life, broken and bruised. But to him, I wasn't broken and bruised. To him, I was his best friend. And I was still the person I was before because he knew me. He knew who I was before I got into that bad place.
Yeah.
And he knew that I was a good person. And he knew that I wasn't the person that was a liar, a cheater, and who stole. So once I got out of the mental health facility, which turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made,
Mm.
I went back to the house I was living at post divorce. And it was the very next day that I got out of the facility, that my best friend and I started navigating my life, learning how I was gonna do things. But he also was with me going to doctors to try to figure out what was wrong with my arm, to figure out how what could be done to fix my arm.
Mhm.
And that's really where our story started, was the very next day after I got out of the facility, which that the day I got out was October 15th of 2017. And so
Mm.
on October 16th of 2017 is really where our story started.
I
Yes,
love that.
we've known each other for years. We were on the department together as partners. We were dating prior to this,
Yeah.
but it wasn't ever exclusive. It wasn't ever real. I say so. On October 16th of 2017 is, like I said, where our story started. And from there, yes, things every day were hard, and they still are. I still live with daily excruciating nerve pain every second of every day. I deal with the decision I made,
Yeah.
but I've learned how to manage it to the point that it doesn't consume my entire day and my entire life. There are still days that it does, and
Yeah.
I can't go to work because it is just so consuming. I can't barely even get up off the floor because that's where I end up, is on the floor. And I am in so much pain. But we started seeing doctors. We went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. I went through multiple surgeries to try to fix, because when the nerves are torn out of your spinal column, there's no repairing that. There's only trying to create new paths for these nerves and trying to get them to attach to other nerves in hopes that it will help, fire the damaged nerves to wake them up and to get working again, which it never did.
Right.
All of my surgeries, unfortunately, were not successful. But we had to try. And then, something shifted for me on that day, on that October 16th, because I no longer was afraid to have the relationship with my best friend,
Mm.
and I was no longer afraid to be exclusive. And he eventually became my husband and is my husband today.
Yes. I love that. Um, I wanted to let you go all the way through that without interrupting you to ask additional questions because I knew it was an emotional story to tell. And I think that it needed to be told in that whole chunk from my perspective to receive it all in one whole story rather than breaking it up. And first of all, Lindsay, thank you for being that
Right.
vulnerable and sharing. I'm sure that is never easy for a lot of different reasons. Um, and honestly, what I heard was it all started from a place of trauma, something traumatic that you went through. And then your own reaction to that, other people's reaction to that. And then on top of that, like I don't know how old you are. I'm 53. I know when I was in middle school, it was hard enough to navigate then, let alone what I understand from friends who have, and even when my son went through middle school 10 years ago, it was a whole thing, but it is constantly changing. And it is the period in our lives where the most in our bodies is changing, the way we think about the world, about ourselves, about our families, our friends, everything is shifting and we're questioning. And then on top of that, let's be honest, Lindsay, we're women. And
Right.
for us, there is such an emotional tie to everything. And so you add that to the mix of going through trauma during that time, being questioned by the people that are supposed to care about you most, in coming out of that trauma, and then beginning to question yourself and everything you thought or believed, and not feeling what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, was not feeling like there really was an outlet for healing.
Right.
You had to suck it up, push it down. Um, and there are so many people that go through trauma of all different kinds throughout life, and especially in young adolescence, and never speak about it from a perspective of shame. Um, Something similar to your story, people don't believe them, whatever the case might be. And that's where I wanted to circle back to say I faced some childhood trauma when I was younger. I never told anybody until I was in my mid 20s and went through my first divorce. I never even tried to tell anybody what happened to me. And I wouldn't say that's a good thing. Maybe it kept me from some of the responses you got because you did try to tell people and ask for help. I don't know. I can tell you it affected my choices. It did affect how I looked at myself and affected my choices. And like you said, checking yourself into that program was the best choice you ever made. Going to counseling after my first divorce, which was a physically abusive relationship, was the best decision I made. I knew what he had done to me was not my fault. I knew it wasn't I knew there should be nothing I could do that would make him do to me what he did. I did know that in my core, but I still needed to be able to get it out and have somebody confirm that. I didn't know when I went into counseling I needed that, but when I came out, I realized I needed that confirmation so that I could see myself the way I deserved to see myself. And through that whole process is where the childhood things came out. And for you, it was, like you said, spiraling into a lot of activities as a teenager and young adult, becoming a mom, ending a relationship, getting into another relationship, having another child, and no space in there or opportunity, or maybe even, let me ask it this way. Was there a belief that because of how you tried to get help when you were young and the response, did that hold you back from other times when you thought, gosh, I really could use somebody to talk to, or I could really use some advice? Did that keep you from going and looking for that because you were afraid of getting that same response again?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We were raised to keep our emotions to ourselves, to keep our, troubles to ourselves. And so, absolutely, when I become an adult and like you said, I had the one child, the failed remote relationship, then the new one, and another child. I never I think I went to, see someone once, and I had, like, 2 sessions with her, and I was like, "Yeah, this is a joke. I don't belong here,"
Mm,
because I thought going to get mental help was, in lack of better terms, was for crazy people.
yeah,
I didn't think that I was a crazy person. I just thought that I had some thoughts in my head that I didn't know what to do with, but nobody was gonna take me seriously. So I quit going. And I didn't go again until after my incident.
yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, I do believe it kept me from getting help.
yeah. And I think for me, I was younger when things happened, and I think for me it was a place of shame. I can't tell anybody about that. And then it was so many years that I went without telling anybody. But when I went to get help for something else, that came back up. And I was blessed to have somebody great to work with. And this doesn't always happen. So I will say at this point that if you're seeking help, counseling, mental health support, whatever that is, if the doctor you go to, if the therapist you go to, if the counselor you go to is not showing up, is not making you feel like you're safe talking to them, or making you feel like you can't share everything you need to share, then go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Find the right person, because they're out there. They're out there, just like every person we date is not our ultimate partner. Every job we have is maybe not the career for us for the rest of our life. Every doctor or therapist or whatever comes into play is not necessarily your person either. And they're great at what they do. And there are people that are served very well by them. But your situation is unique to you. Even though your trauma might be the same as somebody else's, reactions to your trauma might be similar to somebody else's. The person to help you navigate through that and come out the other side healthy is not always the same as somebody else's.
Right.
So, if you don't feel comfortable, number one, don't stay, but also don't quit. Don't quit on getting that support that you're looking for.
Right. Yes, please do
Yeah.
not quit.
Yeah. One of the other things, and thank you for sharing that side too, that for you, like you faced physical trauma, but then the emotional trauma of the reaction and lack of support that you got to get through what had happened was a completely other type of trauma to go through. And then, doing the things that you did, getting yourself, into trouble and those kind of things, and then becoming a young parent and all the things that came along. It's like in ways just trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And not that having a child is a bad thing. It is a joyful thing. And you even said I had a beautiful baby girl, and you saw her as the opportunity for things to shift in your life. But there's still work to do on all those things that are lying under the surface. And that's why this message was so important to me. I think in your story, you answered some of the questions that you had shared with me, kind of as some guiding questions, and some that I had is, the why and what led up to that. I think one of the things that you answered without specifically answering was, were you thinking about your kids? And you mentioned that what was going through your head is everybody would be better off without me. I'm hurting everybody around me. I'm breaking everybody around me. I am broken. And I've was it a little bit of I'm so broken that I continue to break not only myself but everybody around me, and there's no stopping that. It's like the snowball rolling down the hill, right?
Yes.
And so the short answer to that question is you thought about your kids and your family, the people you cared about, but in a sense of, I would be taking away the pain I'm causing them. But at the same time, you mentioned when you woke up and when you were in the hospital and your daughter was sitting next to you, that shifted to the
Yeah.
realization, thinking about your kids on the questions they wouldn't have had answered, and the trauma at a completely other level that you would have been placing on them. How did that impact the way you approached moving forward out of the incident,
It was
specifically as a parent?
it it was huge. I I knew that I had placed a huge burden on my children mentally. And the way I knew it, well, number one was because I could see it written all over my daughter's face. And that's no burden that a child should be saddled with, especially from their parent. But for my son, he was only 7 or 8 years old, so he didn't know what had really happened. He was just told that I was in an accident.
Okay.
But I also lost custody of my son at that time because I needed help.
Yeah.
And so there was a big burden placed on him too, because, well, now mom's out of his life. And why is mom out of my life? I know mom's here. I know she was in an accident, but why can't I see her? The only
Mhm.
way that I could see him was with supervised visitation. And so it really did shift, because I knew that I needed to help my kids remove that burden from their life and help them understand, really my daughter, for first off, help her understand what I did, why I did it, and try to move forward from it. And
Mhm.
it helped. It worked for a little bit, but then my daughter and our relationship went downhill. And she, like I said, she was a senior in high school. She needed her time away from mom, a way to figure out how to navigate her new life.
Mhm.
And so we didn't talk. And as a parent, not to have a relationship with both of your kids because of what you did and because of your mental health issues, I didn't ever think that that would happen
Yeah.
to me. And I never understood before, when I would see like documentaries or things like that, I never understood how these parents would just continue on with their life and not have relationship with their kids. How do you do that?
Yeah.
But I needed intense help. And I knew that if I was gonna continue to be here for my kids, I needed to get help without them in the picture. And so, looking back on it today, it was the right thing to do, because my daughter needed some intense therapy. My son at the time, like I said, didn't know what was going on, but then he started having his own mental health demons
Mhm.
that landed us in an emergency therapy session for him, because he was having some of those same thoughts. And it was that day that I told him the true story
Mm.
behind what was wrong with mom. But on that day, that was also I felt a shift in him because up until that day, mom was just in an accident. She hadn't worn her seatbelt. And then all of a sudden, he finds out at 11, 12 years old that mom tried to kill herself.
Mhm.
And he, he became my protector that day because he knew that, and he's told me multiple times since then, that he's not ashamed of me. He's not ashamed of the way I look because of my physical disability. He's not ashamed of my past because it is my past, and that he's proud of my strength to be able to move on and pick myself up and dust myself off.
Yeah.
And for a young man at that age to learn such a powerful story about their mother, but then to turn that into their fuel,
Yeah.
like I said, I felt a shift in him that day. And now, I mean, he's one of my biggest supporters in my decision to go public with my struggles, trying to help other people.
Yeah. It Gosh, that's so beautiful, Lindsay, and I'm surprised I'm holding it together as good as I am, honestly. Um, what's really beautiful about that is that you went from a place of feeling like the people you cared about, your children, would be better off without you, to realizing that they're your purpose to fight back. And this is something I'm going to assume that they both understand now, but I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. They became your purpose in fighting back so that you could be a benefit to their lives. You could be present in their lives. You could overcome those things that made you feel like they'd be better off without you, but you were willing to give them up for a period of time to go and do the work you had to do to be able to do that. And I think what we just heard in you talking about your son being such a supporter of you going public with this is that they were your purpose to do the work, even though it meant walking away from them. But in doing the work, you've become the purpose for them, to tell your story and to help other people realize that doing the work is okay. And I want to ask you specifically for the parents, especially out there who might be struggling, who might be asking the questions, would my family be better off? Would my kids be better off? And afraid to get the help because it might mean they lose custody of their kids. What would you say to them?
I would say, um, sorry.
You're fine.
I would say there's absolutely nothing in their life that's more precious than their kids. And there's nothing in their life that's worth dying for, because I thought when I lived that both of my kids' fathers wished that I had died. I thought that they wished they didn't have to do this parenting thing with me anymore. And so they were not like they were happy, or they were not happy. They were upset that I lived.
Mm.
And come to find out, that was 100% false. Because even though my kids' fathers and I were not together, the moment they found out what happened, they realized that they were going to have to step up. For
Mm.
a period of time, they were going to have to step up and be both mom and dad so mom could get better. They did not wish that I died. They wished that I could get better so I could be the mom that my kids needed. So if you're thinking that your kids would be better off without you, that is false.
Mhm.
Because I see the lives that my kids have now that I'm part of, the successes, the marriage of my daughter, my daughter got married, the birth of my granddaughter
Mm.
that I would have missed. My grandbaby would not have known who her Nana was. She wouldn't have even known about me.
Yeah.
And my son wouldn't be able to graduate high school in a few years with me there. And I hate the fact that I put my kids through what I put them through. I absolutely hate it. Because for them mentally it was not good. Would I take back what I did? I would love to take back what I did because it would get rid of my physical pain.
Mhm.
It would get rid of my mental pain. But if I could take back what I did that day by being unsuccessful, I would have been successful another day. I know for a fact.
Mm.
And with my best friend rescuing me that day, getting me to the ambulance, getting me to the helicopter, watching me fly away, not knowing if I was going to live or die, and then to have him step up as big as he did
Yeah.
after he found out I was alive, I would not take it away. And that
Mm.
might sound odd. That might sound odd to some people. Why would you not take away your suicide attempt? Well, number one, because the pain that I have every day means that I'm alive.
Mm.
The nerve pain that I experience every single second of every single day, intense as it may be, I'm thankful for it because that means I'm able to be here and experience the life that I was not supposed to have.
Yeah.
But then I also wouldn't take it back because, again, I'm here. I'm here. I get to tell other people that I walked through the fire of hell, but came out stronger on the other side. Because
Amen.
there's no way I would be strong enough to tell my story if it wasn't for the fact that my best friend stepped up the way he did, that my kids gave me the opportunity to get the help that I needed, and then stepped up the way they have since.
Yeah.
My husband had 2 boys, and then I had a daughter and a son. So now we have 4 kids together,
Mhm.
and we work with every single one of them out almost every single day in some aspect in
I
our
love
4
that.
businesses.
I love that.
I get to see all three of my grandkids almost every single day. And when I see them smiling at me when they walk in the door, my, my daughter works with me every day, Monday through Friday, and she brings her daughter with her so she doesn't have to pay for childcare.
Yeah.
The door opens and I see my granddaughter, and she looks up and she gets this big, huge smile on her face and she says, Nana. I'm not grandma, I'm Nana.
I love
And
it.
I told my daughter the day that she calls me grandma, I'm going to cry because Nana is my name.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, then we just continue refer to you as Nana. My
Yep.
other two grandkids call me grandma, but that name, Nana and Dappa. My husband is Dappa.
I love it.
And then I look at the picture that I have hanging on my wall in our family room. It not only has my husband and I and our four kids and their husbands or wives and our grandkids, but it also has both of our daughter-in-law's families.
Mm.
It also has my husband's ex-wife and her husband, because we share four kids together. We share three grandkids together.
Yep.
And when I was growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 2, and it was cutthroat, it was nasty, and we never had any kind of family function together.
Yeah.
For our grandkids, they don't know a family function without us all together. Because why fight?
Yeah.
We're adults. Why
Yeah.
fight? So am I best friends with my husband's ex-wife? No, absolutely not, but we are friends.
Yeah.
And is it uncomfortable sometimes? Absolutely. I'm sure it's uncomfortable for her to come to our house. It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable for us to go to her house. But look at this life that we built
Mhm.
together. And even though I hurt her two boys mentally by doing what I did, she has still accepted me after the fact, flaws and all,
Mm.
to be civil enough to have these family functions so our kids and grandkids don't have to grow up the way that we did with split families.
Yeah. Lindsay, what I feel like, I don't know what any of these people in your life look like, but by you describing that picture, I see this gigantic family, period. It's not about the who's connected, how, what, or where. It's the legacy that you've been blessed to still be here to create. And that question about, parents who are struggling to get the help because they might lose custody of their kids, or what is everybody going to think? Are people going to accept them, believe them, whatever the case might be? Oh, there it is. For those of you watching the video, Lindsay, that is a beautiful family and an amazing picture. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Trying to get it
Look at
without a
those
reflection.
babies and those cowboy hats. That's what
I know.
a Texas girl like me likes, those cowboy hats. Oh, what a beautiful family. If you're listening to this, I'm going to challenge you. The video of this will be on YouTube, on the Chat for Nat YouTube. And I challenge you to at least go look for this part to see that picture right there. That's the reason to go, even if it means
I got rid of the glare.
oh, there you go.
Most of the glare, I should say.
There we go. Yes.
Yeah.
What a beautiful family. But that
Yep.
right there is the reason, even if it means stepping away from parenting for a period of time, because at the end of the day, all the people we love, but especially our kids, deserve to have us whole and healthy and present in their lives. And your your decision, your attempt, your incident, whatever different ways we've referred to it in this episode, was the catalyst for you to do the work.
Yes.
For sure. And your story is a beautiful blessing, I pray, to people who hear this that might be struggling or who maybe have gone through some portion of your journey as well. I hope to realize your catalyst for change, for asking for help, for demanding help does not have to be the failed attempt that you had. But there are people out there who will listen, who do love you. And I saw something on social media not too long ago that said it was in reference to, I can't remember if somebody was referencing one of their best friends or a sibling, but it was in reference to a young man who took his life. But the video was clips of the times they spent together. And he was the happiest person in the bunch. He was the happiest person in the bunch. And it was a reminder to pay attention to the people who appear happy, because we don't see what's under the surface. And that doesn't, we're not experts. We're not trained in this as everyday human beings. Those experiencing it aren't trained. That's why we struggle to figure out, how do I ask for help? How do I keep asking for help? What's the right place? And we try to just keep pushing through.
There is a picture, if people were to pull up my website,
Yeah, please tell them where they can find you.
it's www.lindsaystadel.com. I mean, they can find me on Facebook, they can find me on most of the major platforms, but on my website, I've got pictures. I've got a picture of me with a huge smile on my face. And the caption on it says something along the lines of, "This is the face of mental health and suicidal ideation 7 days before I tried to take my life."
Mm,
And then the next picture you see is a picture of me in the hospital bed in the C-collar, shaved head, and you can see the devastation on my face.
yeah,
And I embrace today, I embrace my failure, because my failure, jumping out of the truck that day, my failure turned into my biggest reward and my biggest success. That
yeah,
picture is my biggest success.
yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I definitely say, pull up my website and look at the pictures on there, because I was putting on a front. I was
Yeah.
smiling. I was going to work every day. I was smiling. I was doing what I was supposed to do to have an outward appearance of everything's okay. But inside, I was a complete wreck.
Mhm.
When I had my kids with me, I was okay. But when I did not have my kids with me, that's when I was a danger to myself. I was never a danger to my kids. I would have never put them in harm's way. The only danger that I was to my kids was mentally.
Mhm.
And we've all talked about it. We've all moved on from it. And I even asked my son, because now he's a sophomore in high school. I asked my son a couple years ago, well, before I started this journey, before I wrote down my story and was in a chapter of a book, Um,
Yes. And can they find the book on your website too?
yes, they can.
Okay.
I don't know that I've got like an order button, but they can find it on my website. They can message me from there. If anybody were to purchase a book, they are retailed at 125, but anybody that mentions that they heard my story on today's show will get a discount, $25 discount. And then they will also get a free You Are Enough wristband that I created, which is my Facebook group is You Are Enough.
I love
Um,
it.
the wristbands are also available for purchase. Um, but if they go out and they look at these pictures and um when I started this journey, I asked my son, what would you think if I came to your school? Because I think he was in fifth, sixth, seventh grade, I believe, when I asked him this question. What would you think if I came to your school and talked about suicide awareness? And he told me, he says, Mom, I think you need to share your story. I
Mm.
think you need to come and talk at my school. And if anybody treats me differently or talks bad about you or doesn't want to be my friend because of what you went through, then I don't want them to be my friend. I don't need them to be my friend because your story is your story, but you're here now.
Mhm.
And he is very wise beyond his years.
I can tell.
He's 16 now, but he's still very wise beyond his years. And he's never been embarrassed. Well, maybe he's been embarrassed by me. I don't know for a fact. He likes to say he doesn't get embarrassed, but he's never been embarrassed by my physical appearance, my physical disability. He's never, once I started sharing my story, he's never been ashamed of my story.
Yeah.
And like I said before, he has turned into one of my biggest supporters. And he has helped me with preparing for when I have meetings or talks.
Yeah.
Um, he has helped me prepare for that by giving me pointers on what to do or how to do it, or you know reading or telling my story in front of the mirror while recording myself so I can see. He has helped me with all of that. And
Yeah.
my daughter has helped me with preparing for things like that as well. And my husband is the one that from the very beginning said that I had a story to share and he thought that I should write a book.
Mhm.
And so it was my aunt who got me in touch with the publisher of the book that I'm in. And that's been a little more than a year ago that I got in touch with him, and the book's been out since August of this year. It was released, and I've I was very scared at
Mhm.
first because that meant that my story was out there.
Yeah.
And how is it going to look on my family, on our businesses? Kyle, all that stuff is clean. How is it going to look on my husband? How's it going to look? Just I was worried about all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I talked to both of my bonus sons, my daughter, my son. I talked to both of my daughters-in-law. I talked to my son-in-law before I even did it because I wanted them to be aware that I had been approached about writing a book, but
Mm-hmm.
I also did not want to share my story if they felt like it was gonna jeopardize themselves in any way,
Yeah.
and I did not get any pushback from anyone. Every single one of them said, "No, I think that's a great idea. I'm proud of you. I can't wait for it to come out." They're like, "I know your story. I know it. I was there. I lived it."
Yeah.
My daughters-in-law, not so much, and my son-in-law, not so much, but they know what they've heard. But now they'd be able to read it, you
Yeah.
know? And I also asked them about sharing that picture that I shared with you, because 'cause I'm also gonna be part of a documentary sharing, my story myself, and one of the pictures that's gonna flash in that documentary is the picture of my family,
Yeah.
but I felt like I needed their consent
Mhm.
because that's their child, my
Yeah.
grandchildren are in this picture. And every single one of them again was, "Please share it. You can share it. We want you to share your story." And so my fear of sharing the darkest moment of my life turned out to be an amazing, uplifting opportunity for me because here I am, just a small town girl. I'm permanently disabled. I have facial deformities because I landed on my face. But now my story is global,
Mhm.
and I won't I won't necessarily know unless someone actually contacts me and says, "Hey, your story helped me." But I'm people tell me all the time that it's not very often that we get to speak with survivors of suicide,
Yeah. That's exactly right.
because 9 times out of 10, if someone tries to commit, they succeed.
Yep.
And then they're not there to give their side of what happened.
Yeah.
And if I can help just one person, if I can make one person decide to stay, then my decision to share my story will have been successful because I helped that one person. I've got the family in my picture. I've got the family that I chose.
Mhm.
I've got the family that supports me because my own family doesn't.
Yeah.
I only have a relationship with one of one of my aunts, my mom, and two of my nieces. I'm the third oldest of 9,
Oh, wow.
and I do not have a relationship with any of my siblings.
Yeah. And I think that goes
Nobody.
back to the stigma thing, like the generation we
Yes.
grew up in, you didn't talk about it. You
Yep.
you didn't get help. It wasn't the norm. And every chance I get that therapy, counseling, anything comes up for a friend going through a divorce, whatever, I'm like, go, go.
Yes.
I have gone 3 or 4 times for a few months. Once, I think, for a little over a year, I was going. Every single time, it was the best action I took at the time that I took it. Um, So I think it goes back to the stigma of our generation. I do think that is changing. And Lindsay, I'm going to tell you, your story changed my life. Not because I'm a suicide survivor, not because have I had dark times? Yes. Not because I ever had suicidal ideations, not because I ever needed to be hospitalized, but because there were times I was broken. And you reminded me that coming through the other side of that makes me triumphant. I'm not defined by the biggest mistake I ever made. I'm defined by the coming back from that. And
Exactly.
so while your story is very different than mine, it it changed my life for that, but it also changed my life because I will never understand what you went through, but it gives me more understanding from a general perspective of what to look for, of standing in places with people who are struggling, who are coming out of dark times and feel like they don't have anyone, to be the person that stands in that gap. Your husband, your best friend who did that, which we didn't talk a ton about him in this piece. And I actually would love if we set up another time to record and we do a part two where we do touch on that piece and a little more in depth about the building back. But I want to touch also on what you guys have created as a family in your business. I want to talk about Lindsay and her family, the entrepreneurs, and what
Hmm.
you're creating. And we didn't have time for that today. So please let's do a part two where we can touch on the building back piece more. I think that can give people a lot of hope. But you've changed my life, Lindsay, with your story. And I hope that I can be better in the ways that I show up for people. And maybe because of your story, I can help someone some way, somehow. But I will say to those who are listening, and who've been listening today, that Lindsay's a resource. Lindsay wants to help people and have conversations. So whether you have a podcast of your own that you'd like to have her share her story on, or a stage or an opportunity for her to speak, or you're somebody that's struggling that needs a safe place to reach out to start your journey back, please go to Lindsay's website, reach out to her. What was the name of your Facebook group again for people to
It's
connect
called
there?
it's called You Are Enough,
There you go.
and the cover page is a black wristband that says You Are Enough.
Perfect.
Yes.
So please reach out to Lindsay. Um, and I'm sure she'd be able to, or would love to share resources or things to help you get started on a journey if that's what you need to do as well. But Lindsay, I'm grateful to know you. I haven't known you long. We met about a month ago in a mastermind group that we're in, and I am grateful to have met you. I'm grateful to have heard your story, and I'm honored that you're trusting me in my podcast with it. But for those listening, we are going to do a part two because there's so much more to Lindsay building back and what her and her family have created, the businesses that they have and that she's continuing to build. And I also want to talk more in depth about specifically um, your journey in helping people that are struggling and in sharing your story and in coaching people through those things and what that looks like for you as well. So, Lindsay, thank you again for being here with me today. Thanks for those of you, if you see a glitch in the video or the sound doesn't match up perfect, we had a little power outage in the middle of this. So give us some grace on that. But thanks for staying on with me to kind of catch back up. But we will be back with a part two. And I look forward to being able to continue the conversation with you. Any last thing you want to share with the audience today, Lindsay?
Absolutely. There's two things. Number one, suicide is not a bad word.
Mm,
It is a scary word. And I am not a licensed therapist. I'm not a doctor, nothing like that. But I've got lived experience. And sometimes I think lived experience counts a little more than a piece of paper on the wall. So,
amen.
yes, please reach out to me because there are three words that everybody needs to remember. You are enough.
That is so very true. As we round this out, I think sometimes, oh goodness, as we round this out, I always wrap my episodes with a hot take. And I think that sometimes the world tells us that success looks shiny and perfect. And that's the way we try to show up in the world. But the truth is, the strongest people I know, the strongest I have ever felt as myself, are the people I know walked through fire and the times I walked through fire myself. You can have a 6-figure business and still be healing. You can have peace and profit. You can be broken and still be a blessing in someone else's life. Lindsay is proof that God can use the parts of your story that you think disqualify you to help save somebody else. So never count yourself out. And as Lindsay said, you are enough. Thank you again, Lindsay, for being raw, real, resilient. Your courage is a reminder that survival isn't the end of the story. It's the start of something beautiful and sacred. And again, as a reminder, as we wind this down, if you or somebody you know needs help, please reach out to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. There are resources there 24/7. And if this episode moved you, please share it, because your share might be the one that saves a life. And if you'd like more content from Chat with Nat, you can subscribe to my Substack, again, under the name Chat with Nat. And until next time, remember to focus on your 5 F's: faith, family, finance, fitness, and fun. And remember that wealth starts from within.